Hi, I'm Nadia and I'm the Yogi.
And I'm Michelle and I'm the Blonde.
And this is the Yogi and the Blonde podcast.
In this podcast, we offer guidance,
Motivation,
education,
and inspiration
to help you adopt healthy habits you can sustain for life.
If you enjoy the podcast and would like further information,
head over to our Instagram or YouTube pages.
You can find the links in the bio.
Hello and welcome to the Yogi and the Blonde podcast. Nadia is being quiet. She's saving her voice because in this episode, I am going to ask Nadia some questions. This is genuine stuff that I want to know, by the way. This isn't staged for the benefit of the podcast, but if you have been listening intently, then you will know that one of Nadia's specialities is breath work. And I feel that recently within the industry, and maybe this is just the little zone that I live in, but I feel like people are talking a lot more about breath work and incorporating breath work into their life, into their fitness, into many different things. Mm-hmm. And call me basic, but, you know, we all breathe. We wouldn't be alive if we weren't breathing. So I guess my question to Nadia, as someone who has studied this, is, Nadia, why do we need to learn how to breathe? Or what is breath work? Because we all can breathe. What's the deal? What's going on?
Well, my journey first started with yoga. I remember way before. This is way before I got into the industry, and I'd learned about my kidney disease, and I was doing going to the gym and changing the way that I eat, and was dabbling a bit into yoga and stuff. And the teacher that I'd go to for yoga, and I remember I got this private assessment done from her, and she told me about chest breathing. Oh, you're a heavy chest breather. And I was like, okay, whatever. And you would have heard that. I'm sure you've heard being a chest breather, right, Michelle?
I haven't. I've heard being a mouth breather. And I've heard about belly breathing. But I've not heard about chest breathing.
Yeah, where you just send the breath into the chest. Okay. Now, I want you to think about, what do most people do, like in general? You think about what position most people are in at work. Sitting, majority of people, right? And when you're sitting, what are you doing? I want you to play around here. Some of you, those that are just listening, I'm going to get Michelle to slouch. I want you to slouch, Michelle. Okay. Just slouch. Just let your shoulders roll forward and just look up at me though. But just, you can slouch and look up at me. Okay. Now try to take a big breath into the belly when you do this. Where does your breath go? Where does your breath go?
Into my chest.
Okay. And now sit up tall. Okay. And take a big breath in through the nose and breathe into your diaphragm, into your belly. That's easier, right? Isn't it? Okay. So yes, you got to think about, when we look at, you asked, like, breathing is really important. We don't know how to breathe. And when we are stuck in a state of stress, we our posture, like I was saying, posture, right? We get tired, we get lazy, and we're sitting for long periods of time, which we're not built to do, which Michelle and I have done a podcast on this as well. Now, when you think about it, it affects the way that we breathe. And when you're stressed, do you ever notice that you get puffed out, or you might be holding and tensing the body, and the shoulders come up and scrunch up, kind of like that?
Sometimes if I'm stressed, I feel like I can't breathe properly. It feels like I'm kind of trying to get over a hill. Yep. It's like I can't quite. And then I kind of, so it's not, maybe it's anxiety linked to that, but sometimes I will feel like I can't get my breath in enough.
Yeah. Now think about when you're doing cardiovascular, you're out of breath, right? And you're going to be mouth breathing because you're creating a stress point, right? Like when I say stress point with exercise, it's not like, oh my God, I'm stressing out, but it is a form of stress for the body, but it's a healthy stress. It's when you do it day in, day out is what's not good for you. So if you exercise 24/7, so this is where you guys might hear that word called overtraining, right? Your body needs to rest. Your body's like a computer. So that would be always putting your body in a stress state. Your breath can be like that as well, if you know how to breathe properly. Now, let's come back to how the breath can make us sick. So I've kind of laid a bit out about the posture. So we can't breathe fully into our diaphragm. And when we scrunch up and hold tension and tightness, and also talking about exercise, you're like out of breath and you're trying to do it, but it's just, you're trying to catch your breath. Okay. Now there's good stressors and bad stressors, and stress that we shouldn't be doing all the time. And how our breath can make us sick. Now, our breath affects our nervous system, our parasympathetic and our sympathetic nervous system. So if you're not sure what those words mean, think about flight, fright, and rest and repair. That's your parasympathetic nervous, which is part of the vagus nerve. Now, when you are constantly don't know how to breathe, like somebody who snores, or you heard me say this, Michelle, is mouth breathing. You do mouth breathing when you are trying to catch your breath and you're doing cardiovascular, right? So you're tapping into the sympathetic nervous system. Okay. So when you're doing that kind of breathing, you're activating the sympathetic nervous system. So if you're always doing that kind of breathing, you're just breathing into the chest, not tapping into the diaphragm, you're always stuck in that sympathetic nervous system. So you're always in flight, fright. You're always
more
survival
state.
mode. Yeah, you're in the survival mode. I like the word better, survival, because that makes more like you're like running away from the tiger that's about to eat me, kind of thing.
Yeah, we're beyond that now.
We are beyond that, but a lot of people get it. No.
Yeah.
So, and when we breathe, it affects us, and how we breathe can change. So this is how our breath is our medicine, but it can make us sick if we don't know how to do it right. So it's the same thing as, okay, I'm going to use this. This might be a good example. It's about, think about fueling your car, right? Specific cars need specific fuel, right? My car has to be a 91 octane. It can't take anything else. Now, if I give it anything else, it's going to crap out, right? So our body's that way. So if you're always giving it something that's not good for it, or if you're eating fast food day in, day out, your body eventually will crap out. Pardon my French, but it will give up. It won't work anymore, right? So it's the same thing with your breath. So if we're always mouth breathing, a short breath, but don't get me wrong, because that is also that is important, but knowing when to use it and where to use it, because I do those types of breathing, but I also shift it with nostril breathing and diaphragmatic breathing. Okay. So how the breath is the medicine, like I said before, think about your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So your survival and your rest and repair state of the nervous system should go like a wave, like just a wave, not a peak up and down where it's point, like a mountain, but just a nice curving wave naturally going from one to the other, right? Just very soft and calm. But what happens if we're always in a state of worry, anxiety, run will be stuck up there, up into the sympathetic. Otherwise, you might be depressed and stuck down in the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And so being stuck at either apart is not good for the system, not good for the body. You need to create that nice balance. And a great thing is to learn how to breathe, and breathing through the nose. So you want to inhale through the breath and exhale through, inhale through the nose, exhale through the nose. I said breath, but let me rectify that. So inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. I get a lot of people like inhale through the nose and then they'll exhale and force it out to the mouth.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I've heard. And that's sometimes actually what I tell people to do during a heavy workout.
That's a good thing.
To help kind of push the weight away. Yeah. So like literally push.
Like the Pilates breath. Like you get them or you go,
yeah,
because then you engage that core, which helps with the push as well. And it's all that force, because when you inhale, you're creating space and getting ready, right? In yoga, it's used the same thing. The way that I teach with yoga is you work it with your bandhas, which is your core, right? You inhale, you drop the pelvic floor, mula bandha. So think about midstream stopping. And as you exhale, you draw the lower abdominal in towards the back of the spine, udihiri bandha. So, I work the breath when I teach clients. I teach them that to just get a feel of how it works, but it's slightly different when you're exercising, but it gives them a sense of an understanding. Now, the breath, by creating balance through the breath and breathing through the nostrils, helps to tap into the diaphragm. When we think about the diaphragm sits right underneath the ribs, right at the point underneath the sternum, right? And right behind the diaphragm is where it's like a button. Think about a big red button, and it pushes into the vagus nerve. Then you're tapping into the parasympathetic nervous system. So I'm sure you've heard people, you might have heard, this is a very old thing, take some big deep breaths, right? But not through the mouth, because when we go through the mouth, you can breathe into the diaphragm, but it's more into the lungs, okay? And that'll get going with the sympathetic nervous system. So breathing into the diaphragm so you can tap and push into the vagus nerve, so we can tap into the parasympathetic nervous system. Does that make sense?
Okay. So a strategy to help bring you out of that more stressed state, if you are finding yourself in there consistently, because a bit is not a bad thing.
Yeah, as long as you can take yourself out. So this is an experiment I'm doing with myself, with my workout, and as well with my clients, is when we are doing our rest, they breathe in and out through the nose at the same length. So they breathe in for 3, they breathe out for 3, they breathe in for 3, and they breathe out for 3. So then that just helps with recovery. It helps with recovery because you are stressing your body. It's a good stress because you're creating exercise, you're creating movement, which is what our body's built to do. Our physical body and our brain stay healthy by movement. But if you already have a stressful life, you might not think you have a stressful life. That would be another podcast for another story, to explain different stresses in life and knowing if you're stuck in a stress point or not. And anyways, depending what's going on in your life, if you are chronically ill, you are depressed, any of that kind of thing, or mental issues or financial stress or family stress, any of that, and you're working out, we want to make sure you balance it out. Recovery is so important, and the breath helps with recovery, because I'm noticing that. So I do breath work in the morning. I do a breath work routine in the morning. I write, and then I do that breath in between my sets, and I at least try to do 3 minutes. Ideally, my goal is it's 10, but sometimes I don't have enough time because I've got to get to a client. So 3 minutes, something is better than nothing. So I'll do 3 minutes of some balance out breath, down regulating breath. I'll teach you guys more about it in another episode that we're going to do. That's called a water, coffee, whiskey. Now, what I want you to just work on is just breathing in and out through your nose. This is going to help with that breath and connection. Now, chest breathing. We've covered everything. We talked about how the breath can make you sick. Does that make sense what I'm explaining, Michelle? When I'm saying
Yeah.
how the breath can make you sick, is there any questions you got on that?
Well, so I guess, I kind of said, why do we need to learn to breathe? Because we can breathe, we all breathe. But yeah, I guess the quality of your breath makes a difference. And if you are constantly breathing through your mouth, or you haven't given your breathing apparatus the space to accept the oxygen, then I can totally see why people might need to learn to
breathe
do
properly
it
and
properly.
become aware of it, because any clients I teach, a lot of them are like, oh, I thought I was breathing quite well. Like, I'm going to share a story with a client of mine. I taught her the breath. She's got a beautiful young daughter, and around 5, and she'll have these moments where she winds herself up and she gets very panicky and upset, and they tell her just to breathe deep, and she'd breathe in and out through the mouth, and that's going to actually make it worse, because she's tapping into the sympathetic nervous system rather than the parasympathetic nervous system. And this is what she needs to learn, is how to get out of that sympathetic, right? So I taught my client how to breathe, and we were talking, and I said, teach your daughter, so then that helps you. If when you learn something, teach someone else, and that will strengthen that knowledge of that. So I suggested, I like, teach your daughter. You're doing it because she's doing the breath at home, and the different little breath techniques that I showed her. And so she started teaching that to her daughter. So when her daughter got into this state, she would talk to her through it, and they'd do it together. And she said that it has shortened, and she is able to calm down really, really quickly and turn around really, really quickly. The breath is very powerful. So, for example, I've spoken about my Oura ring that I've got, and it measures your HRV, which is your heart rate variable. And this helps to tell you how your body's recovering from stress. So the breath, if we're not breathing properly, we're stressing our body out more. If you breathe properly and learn how to breathe properly, then you are able to use that as a tool to become in a healthier state. Now, breathing, and it's not just doing it once and you're healed. And it's just like going to the gym. You just don't go once and then you've lost that 10 kgs, or you go and you lose the 10 kgs and then you completely stop and then you put the weight back on. It's the same thing. If you stop being conscious of it and putting it into practice as a daily thing. And it doesn't have to be, a lot of people, like even with meditation, people think they need to be sitting for like 20 minutes and really long hours at a time. It's taking little baby steps and snippets. If you do it a few times through the day, a few minutes, you'll start seeing the difference. You'll start doing it more often. At times when you got more time, you might do a little bit longer. And I'll go more into depth in our next episode of 3 types of kind of styles of breathing that you can do to help with different states within your day. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, but just focus on breath, on diaphragmatic breathing in and out through the nose, because that's how you can get into the diaphragm. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the other thing is, that's it. We've talked about the 6. We've talked about how the breath is medicine. We've talked about diaphragmatic breathing, how that affects the difference between diaphragmatic and chest breathing. Was there anything else that we're missing, Michelle? Anything else? I think we've covered it all.
That was it. But something that you just said that was really interesting to me, because I think you said about the awareness and having an awareness for yourself. So when you and I recently went on the pelvic floor course, and we did some practical work together, do you remember? I was completely unaware that as I was engaging my pelvic floor, I was also holding my breath. And I had no idea until you or the trainer pointed it out. So it's funny having what you said about the awareness, because actually maybe people don't realize that they are mouth breathing, or that they aren't getting fully into their diaphragm. And I wasn't aware that I was really holding my breath when I was trying to do certain movements. So that was an area that once I became aware, I could start working on, and I could do it now, but I didn't know. And I think that's just a really interesting point, that, like I said at the beginning, we can all breathe, but you might not know that you aren't doing it
it's just
optimally.
It's fascinating. That makes me also think, like, I'm going to use this as an example. So a client of mine, we were going to do side lunges, and I could see her kind of roll her eyes, because she loves the Les Mills classes, and she does them, and she's like, does them 5-6 days a week, and they do side lunges, right? And so I'm like, okay, today we're going to do side lunges, and she's like, I could see that, but then by the time we were done, because I was teaching her form and technique, because she wasn't doing it correctly, at the end she was like, oh wow, my bum is sore, wow, I wasn't doing it right. And after that, what was funny is the next week they had done side lunges in the class, and she's like, for the first time I actually felt like I was working my bum, because she didn't know. It's about awareness. That's what that little story is about awareness. If you don't know, you're not aware. And it's something as well, when I was talking to Michelle earlier today at the gym, and she's getting help with, I hope you don't mind about your hip. I'm just going to kind of, okay. She's getting help with a physio, because she's got a bit of a hip issue. And we were talking about it, and she wasn't aware. And there's things that he was saying to her about her form and technique. And sometimes your posture can agitate those and bring those injuries on. And she said to me, she wasn't aware of, when she was squatting, one of her knees was doing something funny. I don't know the details of it, but it wasn't going properly, which then that puts pressure onto the hip. And she was like, I wasn't aware. And I was talking to Michelle. I said, sometimes I feel vain, because I'll record myself, like video record myself in the gym. Sometimes it's for social media. I do it for both. But a lot of the times it's just to see my form. So I'll visually see it and go, oh, I did this wrong. Oh, I didn't know my knees went in and out there. I didn't know this. I use it as a tool. So it's all about awareness. So it's just take it as an awareness tool. Just start to become aware. Don't beat yourself up. Don't be hard and critical on yourself. Just like, okay, this is how I am. Okay, I'm going to start changing this. Awesome. Breathe in through the nose and out through the nose.
I feel very relaxed now, because I've been doing a lot of breathing in through my nose and out through my nose.
So Michelle,
I need a nap now.
Now Michelle, when you feel a bit anxious or you're a bit nervous on something, I want you to tap into, just take a minute or two and just tap into that breathing. That just in and out through the nose. And I'll teach you guys some more things on the next episode.
Awesome. Looking forward to that.
Yeah. So again, if you guys got any questions, leave it down below. Follow us, like us, comment. The more feedback we get, and we get ideas on what you guys like, didn't like, or want to hear more about, it helps us grow and learn. And if you share this with other people, this helps us to grow. So that means we can keep putting on these podcasts. And we just want to share what we've knowledge. That's where we're at the moment. We're just wanting to share and finding ways of doing it in a sustainable way. So learning how to breathe is such an amazing, powerful tool. Do you know what? That costs you bloody nothing. That you don't have to get any funny gadget or anything like that. It's just becoming aware, and it's a powerful tool to use, and learning different breath techniques. Now, the only thing that would cost you is if you want to learn more about it, or you want help with it and assisting and learning how to use it as well. Now, I am doing, like, when this goes up, it might be past the date or around the time, but on the 10th of June, we've got an open house at Les Mills. We're based in Newmarket in Auckland, New Zealand, and I'm doing a breath work session there. And before that, Michelle and I are actually having a bit of a chat as well. We're talking about some habits. So you can come and join Michelle and I there, or Michelle's going to be also joining me for the breath work. So you can join us at both bits as well. So that's us for today, I think. Is that it, Michelle?
That's
I think
us. No,
that's us.
That's us. So thanks for joining. Thanks for listening in, and we will speak to you all again soon.
Ciao.
Bye. If you have enjoyed listening to our podcast today
and want to hear more, please subscribe using the button below.